continue with the type of behavioral research. As we said, there is three types: descriptive, relational, and experimental. Um, the first step is observing and describing the situation, what has happened. And then relational, identify the relation from multiple variables, and experiment is going to do a close controlled study with independent variable influence to dependent variable. So for experimental study, we need start with a research hypothesis. A hypothesis is a precise problem statement that can be directly tested through the experimental investigation. Compare with the theories. Hypothesis is similar but more focused on the statement. Can be examined. Different type of hypothesis. One is non-hypothesis is typically a statement that there is no difference between the factors, between the conditions. And then alternative hypothesis is a statement that's mutually exclusively with a non-hypothesis. The goal of the experimental is to find statistic evidence to against or prove the non-hypothesis in order to support alternative hypothesis. Hypothesis should specify. Of course, you're going to study two variables or multiple variables, and how did independent variable influence dependent variable. So we study if there is a relationship between them. So if is more than significant difference result, then that means it does influence. So it's alternative hypothesis. So the default non-hypothesis means there is no difference. So there is an independent variable and dependent variable. Those are the two key things for the experimental study. So the independent variable is the influencer, is the factor. It's the factor of cause of change for the dependent variable. So, for example, we are study two things. One is in class result, what the outcome of a study, and with a different format. So the different format is the independent variable, which is online or in class or blended, and then the result is the outcome. So you will study collecting data about the online class, and then the in-class course, and then you're going to, of course, there is many more factors, but if the rest of the factor is same, the only difference is online and in class, then you will be able to determine if online and the in-class difference making the difference according to the outcomes. So the outcomes would be dependent variable, and the independent variable would be the different format of the course. So that's what it's saying. The experimental study have to be controlled study. So you cannot say, okay, all the background of the family and hardware resource, all of those have to be same. So you have to be under controlled study, so you can know, okay, exactly what the factor really impact the outcomes. So typical independent variables would be, especially in HCI, would be type of different device if you want to, determine if it is different device can be influence the result and um, different user demographics and also related to the content of user status, social status, physical status, and that you typical dependent variable in HCI would be the result of how fast they can complete the task, efficiency, accuracy. You use the error rate, subjective certification, likely skilled reading, like you send a survey out, and easy to learn and retention reading and physicals and cognitive demand. Um, those are dependent variables. So what are we looking for? Oops, sorry. And then component of the experimental is I put it on what, who, and how. So basically what you're going to do. So basic treatment or conditions and the different um, technology device or procedures we want to compare. And then the unit, which is an object of to which apply the experiment. So who is the user? So if you want to test it, okay, the different technique or different device, and then how you're going to design the method is the way how you're going to design the experimental unit to be complete the treatment or complete the testing or what. So in experimental testing, the randomization is one of the most important factors, and it is the random assigned treatment to the experimental unit to or participant. So in a total randomized experiment, no one is able to predict. So it's totally random. You can generate randomization numbers maybe by software or random tables. For example, like this, you want people do sequence one, and then order of it means it's A, B, C, D, and then the second user and do B, C, D, A, and three C, D, A, B, and four D. So they're random and they are all balanced. They are all do same thing, but in random order. Scientific testing. So when the number of the comparison group are all known, you direct compare them and draw conclusion. If no significant testing difference, or if there is no significant testing needed, then um, there could be no significant testing needed because there is so many uncertainty involved. Just like I said, I gave example of different format toward influence the outcome because we cannot do an experimental study on the student online compared to student in class result because people have a different device, different technology, different cultures, different even education cultures from the parents could influence the result of the student learning outcome for those K-12 students in the today is study online. So you cannot do the experimental testing. So there's no significant testing needed. When population is large, we can only sample the subgroup of peoples from the entire population. So that's why significant test will be helpful to allow us to determine how confident we are because we are not be able to testing everybody. We just really sampling the population and generate result for the whole group. So we use a sample population and to see if the result is significant different with one factors to influence the result. And if it is, that's more likely the whole group will be having the same result. There is two type of error could be happens. All the significant testing could happen. So one error could be refer to the mistake or of rejecting the non-hypothesis one. It is true and should not be rejected. And the second one is the opposite is called beta. The first one called alpha error, and referring second type is referring to mistakes or not rejecting. One is it is false, and but we're not rejecting it. So this is just another form can explain the reality if it's um, this is in judicial case, just humanity field. This is a guilty or not guilty. Should be not guilty, but we mistakenly making it guilty. So this is type 2 error, and if it's guilty and it's um, and we say this is a non-guilty with type 1 error. Same thing as HCI. Um, so the limitation of the experimental research is it's just like we said, it does need a well-defined testable hypothesis and with the limited number of dependent and independent variables. Like I said, we have to control the rest of variables to testing where one variables. So it does require very strict control of factors. So lab-based experimental may not be a good representative with the user-based interaction behavior. So I don't know. I don't see that a lot being used in HCI research. So the next part is the research design. And design procedure was first you're going to define the design structure and investigate a single independent variables and investigate more than one independent variables and rel- reliabilities of experimental result and of course experiment procedures and then the study. So three group of studies, one is true, quasi, and non. And so when the design study, if it's multiple group or conditions, then we have to do the randomization. If we do randomization for sure, then we do true experimental. If it's not really randomized, then quasi experiment study. That's that design. So if it's not a multiple group, then single group, then not have to be the experimental. And character of the true experimental is normally based on at least on the hypothesis have multiple conditions. The dependent variable can be quantized, measured, and use statistics significant testing to tell the result. And also, it have to be replicable. That means if somebody else do the same test with the same conditions, it should be um, um, duplicate. So factor to consider as research hypothesis need to be clearly defined, properly scope. Dependent variable is need to be easy measured, and independent variable need to easy to be controlled. Basic design structure is depend on how many independent variable do we want to investigate and how many different values do each independent have, so we can control how to do that. And design study, okay, if it's more than one independent variable, then we have to go to factor designs, determine number of conditions, and then do between group and within group and split plot method. Or if it's only one independent variable, we use the basic design and determine number of conditions. We do between group or within the group. So between group, that means one participant only experiences one condition. So each of this participant only do one testing. They are randomized, and so they were not doing this and then do this. No,